One man with one microphone who once booked a flight to a friend's wedding to the wrong airport. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another session of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Welcome back. I also like to greet any new listeners, say thanks for tuning in, and I hope you get as much out of my current listenership do out of these podcasts. And obviously those of you who've been tuning in since the beginning, all right dudes, what's up? You know. Anyway, so today's episode is going to be another discussion, because this is a really interesting topic. Again, it's about rights. Rights as a composer, rights to our music. And I do want to put a disclaimer at the start, of course. This is not legal advice. If you want legal advice, you need to go seek it from a legal professional. This is my opinion and my thoughts on the matter. And the matter today is royalty-free music and buyouts. So, yeah, I mean, I don't often touch on the legal side of this, but it's been sort of cropping up in my radar recently a lot, royalty-free music, buyouts at the front end, even just royalty payments in general for your tracks. So for those of you, I just want to do a little bit of an explanation, and for those legal nerds out there, I'll have to apologise if I get any of this inaccurate or wrong. But my understanding of it is this. So you write a piece of music, you own it 100%. You sign that piece of music to a library. The library takes 50% of the publishing, and you own 50% of it as well. So that's called the writer's share. So you own 100% of the writer's share, which is 50% of the total, and the publisher, the library, owns 100% of the publishing share, which is 50% of the total. That's pretty standard. You write a track for a library, it's a 50-50 split. Some people have other splits, but that's pretty much the standard, right? And in trailer music, so actually before we get to trailer music, let's talk about TV. TV, your track gets placed on a TV show. You might see an upfront payment. You probably won't. But you might do. It might be like a couple of £100, couple of grand. And then you'll get what's called the back end, which is the royalty payments. And those royalty payments, say you are paid quarterly, and you'll get those through your performing rights organisation. So for me, that's the PRS. America, you've got two, and there's pretty much every company has one. And sadly, not all of them perform, brilliantly. Anyway, so you will sign up to a PRO, they're called, Performing Rights Organisation, and they will then divvy out your royalties. And you'll get a royalty statement quarterly that's like, this quarter you earned £10 in royalties. And that £10 is your writer's share, okay? That's your 50% of the total. And the publisher will also get the other half, the £10. So if a publisher has 1,000 composers, each of them earning £10 every quarter, then they will get a statement that says £10,000 this quarter, whereas each single individual of those composers will have a statement that says £10. Because they're splitting the royalties 50-50. Now that's TV, and that accounts for advertising as well. Now with trailers, what trailer companies like to do, and actually I have to say a lot of trailer composers overlook this, but trailer companies like to say, hey, you know what, we'll just pay you a handsome upfront fee and not pay royalties. So they don't pay on the back end. So when your track gets played in the cinemas, you don't get paid. Streaming royalties are different, but let's be honest, they're pennies anyway with regards to that side of things. But essentially, trailer music is royalty-free music. Now, this is something that a lot of composers overlook. I see a lot of composers snubbing royalty-free music, being like, "Oh, that's it's terrible. They're doing these composers a disservice. What happens if that royalty-free music lands on a YouTube trailer, a YouTube video that gets millions of views, and they only paid £25 for it?" Well, that's how trailers work, right? Admittedly, you probably won't get paid £25. Let's say you got, I don't know, £5,000 for a track that went on a trailer. Even just Act 1. Act 1, you got £5,000. So there we go. Okay, great. I got five grand from this placement. That's huge. But then you look at that trailer and how many times that gets played. Millions upon millions. So let's review that, going back. So let's say that one track you do for a royalty-free library and they sell it for £25. In fact, let's just so that my brain doesn't explode, let's say it's £50. Let's say that gets downloaded and purchased 1,000 times. That's £50,000. And obviously the royalty-free company will take a split, depending on which library it is. You will get a certain amount of money. Now this is where I don't want to say contentious, but this is where the area starts to grey and the lines begin to blur. Because you could have a library that say they sell 1,000 copies of this track for 50 quid. That's 50 grand on the table. Some libraries will give you, the composer, a cut of that fee. Some libraries will say, okay, we sold this 1,000 times, here's your cut, and it varies. And this, I think, is where people get a bit riled up with royalty-free. Some royalty-free libraries will pay a scaling percentage. So you could get anywhere between 90 to 50% of that fee, depending on which library and what the conditions were when you signed up. So you could potentially get £45,000 of that 50, or you could get 25,000 of that 50, or now this is where it becomes contentious. Or what happened at the beginning of your working with this royalty-free library is that they bought you out. And what that means is they give you a relatively sizable fee up front to write a track so that they own 100% of the copyright, which means that they own the 100% publisher share and 100% writer share, 50-50 split. So any work that goes out of that in future, you do not see. You are just paid to write a piece of music that they then own. Now, this is the bit where everyone's like, well, wait a second, what if they sell loads of it and I don't get any money? Well, you did get money. You get an upfront fee. So with trailers, for instance, you don't often get an upfront fee. You write for free, and then you get the cut of what happens next. With royalty-free libraries, they could buy you out and then go on to sell 1,000 copies of your track at £50, which would be 50 grand, and they keep it all because they bought you out. So that's where people get a bit like, oh, hold on, that's not fair. And I agree. I'm not sold on that idea. However, put myself in different shoes. If I were starting out and I was absolutely desperate to make a living from music, these buyouts are actually pretty good. They can be £500 to £1,000 per track. So if I manage to get in with one of these libraries and they're like, yeah, you know what, we'll buy 10 of your tracks for £1,000 each. Holy smokes, that's 10 grand. So it really depends on how you view writing. Now, I myself view writing as a constant stream. It's not like this kind of struggle to create my masterpiece, that this masterpiece needs to bring me and my estate royalties for the next 200 years. No. It's not like that at all. It's a stream, a constant stream of ideas. I guarantee you could sell a track to a royalty-free library for whatever the fee is, let's say $1,000, and then you could write a track that was basically the same. Oh, blimey, this puddle's deep. I think it's a lake. Let's get out of that. You could do a track that's basically the same again. You know, try not to see your work as this precious thing, because you're going to keep writing because you love writing. I keep writing because I love writing. Now, I'm not arguing to say that that is a fine thing to do. Now, like I said, I'm not entirely sold on buyouts, but if I was starting out and I wanted to make a living, someone offered me 10 grand for a 10-track album, I would do that. Because that 10 grand would be the difference between me working in a shop or me working on music for a living. It can become a decent living for you. Now, royalty-free libraries, I think, are kind of like in the wild, wild west of rights management. You know, they are all doing different things. That some of them are buying you out and offering you a cut of streaming. Some of them are just buying you out full stop, no future payments. Some of them don't buy you out, you split the revenue share. It's a really interesting model, because actually, like, I work in other areas. I don't just do music. I have businesses, and in those businesses it's commonplace to hire, say, a writer who you pay an upfront fee, and then you basically own the writing that they have done. Same with designers, same with illustrators, same with photographers. It is commonplace for all the other creatives to have their work bought out. Very commonplace. In fact, so much so that it's not really even questioned. This isn't an argument for buyouts by any means. It's just I'm putting these points to you as a way for you to think about it and come to your own conclusions. I think it's really interesting. You know, what would you do in that situation? Aspiring composer who isn't earning any money, a royalty-free library offers you a high fee to produce a set of tracks that will make you a full-time composer, or a well-established library offers you no fee but the promise of a back end. A big back end. Which admittedly you do have to wait for. You know, you do have to wait for 6 to 12 months at least for that back end, for those back end royalties to come through. So you need to take that into account. And this actually plays into the idea of my last episode, which was exclusivity contracts. If you are exclusive with a library, what do you do if they don't pay you an upfront fee and you're waiting for the royalties and sync fees to come in? What do you do then? You work for other people, or you are a well thought out individual who has a safety net. There we go. Hint, hint. Now, a little bit of monetary advice there. Again, this is not money. This is not financial advice. This is my personal experience and opinion. Having a safety net greatly reduces stress whilst writing. Anyway, there we go. That was brought to you by Richie Financial. Anyway. So you're in that situation. So it does pose an interesting question. If the buyout fee is handsome, why not do it? Because some of those tracks you write for a library where you own 50% of the royalties, they might not earn anything. I've done quite a few albums that have earned, I mean, I'm not even sure I've earned anything, like maybe a tenner. Whoop. You know, So there, it's a very, very fascinating area to discuss. You know, and I'm admittedly becoming more interested in the rights ownership now being a co-owner of a library. It's really, really interesting to talk about. And I compare trailer music to royalty-free music, because trailer music is royalty-free music, essentially. They pay an upfront fee, and you don't see a back end. So it's just really interesting. It's not like, scoring, for example, where you'd get the scoring, the writer's fee, and then you'll see a back end. Well, hopefully, because again, there are companies that are, film companies like to have their budget in a bubble. They like to buy everything out so they own it. So, it's more commonplace for composers of scores to be bought out so they don't have to get the royalties. And that's across the board, people being bought out so that companies can keep hold of rights. Because as a company owner, that makes business sense, doesn't it? One less thing to have to worry about, paying out royalties. So yeah, it's just really interesting. If you don't really know royalty-free music or know about it, there are tons of libraries that do it, and in fact, actually, lots of trailer companies do what they do their kind of like posh version of royalty-free music, which is micro licensing, where it's like you can buy one of their tracks to use on your YouTube videos for like a small fee. So actually a lot of those trailer libraries that you write for are already doing it. It's very interesting. And I know it's coming, not commonplace, but more common for trailer libraries to offer buyouts. And again, you have to weigh these options up, The interesting with these things I find is the resentment comes when you think of the possibilities of a track. So say, for instance, let's give an example. I write a track that a trailer company wants to buy me out for. Let's say it's a well-established trailer company on one of their popular releases, and they want to buy me out for, say, $5,000. Now, I know that a track of a popular release of a big library could easily bring in 5,000. Easily. So I would be less, I'd be like, okay, maybe not. Maybe I'll just give that to somebody else. But maybe that's for you. You need the money to bring it in. So you've got to weigh up your options. Again, no judgment. Everyone's situation is different. If I needed $5,000 and someone was offering me $5,000 for a buyout, I'd be like, hell's yeah, son. Maybe not that, but I would definitely say something. Probably, yes, please, thank you, sir. I'll take your money kindly. So it just depends on your situation. Sometimes your situation limits your choice. If you don't have any money coming in, then you can't really afford to write for a library who doesn't give you fees up front. If you have a safety net or you have money coming in, then you have more of a choice. The wonderful thing is, and I think this isn't often stipulated, isn't it lovely that we have all these choices? We have all these big trailer companies, we have all these big royalty-free companies, we have all these big ad agencies, we have all of these companies producing music, and they all want content. And who can give them content? Us! Who can give them content? Us! Yeah, that's right. It's awesome. It's nice to flip things on their head, like I did with the contract, exclusivity. Maybe it's flip it on rather than giving you the opportunity. Maybe it's you being in the seat of power, being like, you need me, huh? That's interesting. And the same here. We have choice. We have opportunities. You think back in the day when it was just kind of basically KPM, the big, massive music libraries, and you couldn't afford the money to have a synth. Or you didn't have enough money to pay for studio time, or you didn't have enough money to have a studio. You think about the barriers to entry are so low these days. Everybody and anybody can write music, which, yes, makes it more competitive. But you know what? If you kind of band together in a big team, then it's not a competition, it's just a massive team. Awesome. A massive team of awesomeness. So flip it on its head a little bit. All these avenues are potential avenues for you to take as composer. And you can write for a big trailer library, write for a big stock library, which is another word for kind of buyouts and royalty-free libraries. You can write for a scoring agency, whatever it is you're going to be doing. You just need to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with your goals. If your goal's to earn a living as a composer, make sure that you're doing the stuff that you like and that you find fun. Because, believe me, even writing music can become quotidian and dull and uninteresting if you're doing stuff that you don't care about. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that when you're writing your stuff, you're not limiting yourself to what is being demanded upon. Yeah. Make sure that you're doing what lights you up and is aligned with your sensibilities and style and, because at the end of the day, it's going to have to be you getting up in the morning to write music, whether it's for a royalty-free library to be bought out, whether it's for a massive trailer company, for a bespoke track for the latest Disney blockbuster, whether it's for a corporate film for a local funeral home, You just make sure that you're doing the stuff that you're excited about. Because, it's like corporate's another interesting element there. You're essentially doing a buyout. They don't own the track, or sometimes they do. But the fee's usually pretty low. A few £100. Write us some Coldplay rip-offs. Obviously within legal limits. Cough, cough. And you're never going to use that track ever again, because let's be honest, the corporate tracks end up sounding awful. So yeah, it's just a way to think about it. I'm encouraging you to think individually and creatively about the business side of and the legal side of these things. Now, the other thing to think about is people get very, very antsy about contracts and things. Because my music education was pretty much like, the music industry is going to screw you over. So I went into the world feeling really scared of every contract that was ever given to me. I'd get... And the thing is, I'd start getting solicitors to look at... Not solicitors, legal... what should we call them? Lawyers to look over the contracts, because I was scared that everyone was going to take my rights and steal my money. And do you know what? It's not like... there was always someone like that in the world doing that, but most people are people trying to earn a living and trying to make success for themselves. Yes, you do have to be careful that you're looking after yourself too, but you have to make sure that you also see things in a positive light, that see things that actually we're all here to do our best on our journeys. And whether that journey is to sell your rights to a stock library so that you can become a full-time composer and do what you love every single day, or whether that is to work exclusively with a trailer company and produce however many tracks for them every year and do what you love every single day, or whether that thing is to write, classical, classical stuff that gets sold to a record label, and you do what you love every day. But the really important point is this: money is the tool enabling you to continue. Money isn't the end game. Because you know what? When you get more money, you spend more money. It's a flow. You have to think of it like a river. So the tool, the money that you get, is a tool to enable you to write. Because as my income has grown, do you know what I'm still doing? I'm still writing music. That's what I'm here for. Obviously the money has enabled me to create other things like the Trailer Music School, like Protégé with Vic and Blue Pearl with Vic. And like my other businesses, it's enabled me to create these other businesses that I'm interested in, because the money is a tool to enable you to do the things you love. If that means working with a royalty-free library for a big upfront sellout, or even sort of back-end royalties from a track that's sold for $10, so be it. Now, the other thing is that I do, this is like a call to all composers, is to not be a muso about it. So many composers, like every person, judges the decisions and choices of other composers. Oh, you're selling us all out by selling your rights. I've definitely read that a lot. By selling your rights, you're doing a disservice to every other composer. Well, that's not true. By comparison, someone who sold their rights is just in a different path to me. There will always be people who want to pay premium for premium work. That's the nature of it. If you do any kind of business, they'll be like, well, how can we scale this to have like a premium model of the same thing, or a freemium model of the same thing? There's always those ideas. So don't judge anyone else for doing what they think is the best thing for them at the time. If that's signing an exclusive contract, if that's working for royalty-free stuff, if that's doing corporate work, just stay in your lane, guys. I think that's really a really important thing. Reading other people's opinions about your decision can be so disheartening. If you're like, hey guys, I've just had this contract, or I've just sold my first track to, I don't know, Premium Beats, and yeah, it's great, and now I've got money. Then someone chimes in, oh, while you're selling your rights, that was a mistake. Oh, well, now I feel stupid. I think it's good. It's good to enlighten people about your opinions. But you have to be careful about the way you word them. And that's why this is why the podcast is such a fantastic tool for me to be able to say, you know what, guys, these are my experiences in this area. These are my thoughts on it, but they're not my judgments upon you for making those decisions. If you want to sell, I get it. If you want to get some money in and sell the rights, do it. You'll just create another track the next day. And that's another reason why I'm always saying to my students and the composers at Blue Pearl, guys, get used to writing quickly. Not so that you churn out tons of tracks for us, but because then you stop being attached to the music and the ideas, which makes changing your tracks easier, makes improving them easier, and also makes writing entire albums in a similar vein easier. Which is another question I've had. People have requested I do a podcast episode on that, where, how do we write 10 to 20 tracks in a very, very narrow brief that don't sound exactly the same? And my answer is, practice writing quickly with no judgment. So there we go. I think I've gone off on a tangent again. But hey ho. Now guys, if you are interested in learning how to write trailer music, head on over to thetrailermusicschool.com, where you can sign up to my courses and join the trailer music community, which is always buzzing with lovely, positive composers. And of course, if you want to kind of take your career to the next step, then head on over to protege.school and join the waiting list for our September launch, which is going to be huge. Our current year's intake are doing amazing things, and it's been fantastic. So those of you who don't know, I have done a podcast on it previously, but Protege is a year-long course run by myself and Vikram Goody of Elephant Music, where we have 30 courses teaching the students how to write in 30 different styles, aimed at trailer music, but also TV, games and film, and getting them to run through the whole feedback process, and then their work is then published if it is good enough, which I'm happy to say the work is fantastic, and it's really nice to see how much the composers are growing. And thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to listen. You guys are absolute legends. It's a pleasure. If there's anything you guys want me to cover, hit me up. Otherwise, I will see you in the next episode where I have a very exciting interview. So, see you later, chaps.